You ever seen those really fast drivers who take those cars to the max? Have you ever wondered how they do this? So my first step in my attempt to find out how to drive is, how do normal people drive when given a tricky car? So I spent about half an hour at a Burnside Special Coupe listening to the USSR anthem on repeat to make the most ridiculous car for driving.
Burp.
Brep. I'm not going to edit that out, just so you know.
Come on, I'm literally tapping the accelerator. Unlike Garrett, I don't floor it.
But I'm here.
Okay, but I'm still fine. Josh!
Oh dear. I cut out the engine.
This is fine. I only lost
Oh,
tires.
your engine just ran into me. That's nice.
That's ETK!
Oh no! Oh!
I played Geometry Dash for long and at least I'm fine somehow. I thought I would die, but apparently not. Yeah, okay, that's fine. It just sent me into the video. Wallace! Oh, I just spawned.
All the brakes are fun.
Did you upgrade the radiator?
I think so. I think it's got a drag radiator.
Should we restart? Cause mine is overheating. I clearly don't. Mammon!
What's the doorway, yeah?
No!
Oh, you're alive?
Totally gonna make this an end. Should we? Mine is still going. I'm on the way. Whee!
Luigi!
Yeah, that didn't go very well, as planned. As I've designed that car to be terrible, you can tell it very much worked. Which means I'm a good designer. But it has shown me a main problem through people. Look back on most of those struggles. Most of it you'll hear the engines being absolutely flawed. Throttle control. This is something that you need a lot if you've got a car where the turbo lag is big. Bolide. That Burnside. A lot of cars actually. Throttle response, even on cars without turbos. On any car which struggles for grip, you will need throttle response in order to keep your car in a straight line. An example of this is trying to launch the Group 5 Bolide. Here, I'll do an example where the entire time my foot is completely down on the pedal. And as you can see, it didn't take long for me to end up in a barrier. Now, if I control my throttle and make sure not to be wheel spinning as much, this is how my launch will go. And as you can see, although that launch is a bit slow, I had much more control over the car. I wasn't wheel spinning at all there. Now, while this isn't required, one thing I would suggest, especially if you're trying to learn, is getting the right UI apps to know what your car is doing. I'll give you a little demonstration here of what I would suggest as the bare minimum. So here's what I would suggest as a bare minimum. These should all be non-modded. This is not what I use. If you want that, have fun. While on the topic of setting up, I would suggest a good setup for if you want to be driving well. Using keyboard or mouse steering, if you're insane, is not going to be very helpful if you're trying to drive straight. I would suggest at least a controller, and if you're looking for the best experience, I would suggest getting a steering wheel. Now, that's not saying it's completely impossible to drive these without a keyboard or mouse steering. I can myself drive it with a keyboard, but you're going to be losing a lot of time if you're going for speed runs because you've got much more limited throttle control, linking back to what we were talking about earlier. So with the fancy UI stuff out of the way, we'll get back to our first point of throttle control. How exactly do you throttle control? What is it? How are you going to do it? If you're using a keyboard, what that would basically mean is spamming the arrow key so that you can just get like acceleration. It would be like switching on and off, like 100, 0, 100, 0, 100, 0. You'll probably see in a lot of keyboard movements, it's all like just very slowly, like, when they're taking corners. That's their way of getting throttle control. Whereas if you've got a wheel or a controller, it's smoother because you can use your foot or your finger if you're on a controller to adjust the amount of acceleration you're putting into the car. So, for example, whereas a keyboard would sound going around a corner like, and whereas if we were listening to me on a steering wheel, perhaps it would be like, it's more gradual. You don't have like only instant acceleration, and it can be a game changer at times. It's a lot more easy to control on a steering wheel. You've got more like sense over the car. So what I would suggest is getting a slower car to start with. Like I'd like let's say like a base model Corvette, maybe like a mid-trim Corvette. They're usually quite nice to drive, and they have some pretty bad understeer. So you'll want to be throttle controlling so that you're not ending up in the grass. So I would suggest practicing with slower cars and then eventually getting into the more powerful cars and learning how the car drives is what you need to do, really. You may have noticed in the Bolide here, the tyres have been screeching a lot upon my braking. That is called locking up the brakes. It happens a lot in the Bolide. You can get modern cars with anti-lock brakes, but do note, if you want to be driving older cars, such as this Bolide, you will not be using anti-lock brakes. And also do note, if you turn off like your traction control and ESC and that will probably also deactivate your ABS. So keep that in mind if you're in a newer car. You will want that on because it does make it very hard to take a corner without spinning out because your brakes are basically sending you into a spin. Now, if you try driving your car and you seem to be always losing focus, there are some tips I'd suggest. This Bolide, for example, it's got the massive sun strip. I find that personally really annoying because it's limited by vision. So if you want to take that off, I would suggest it. Another thing I would suggest, if you're getting distracted by your car, paint it in bland colours. I know this sounds stupid, but it works with me. If you make your car boring, you will not get distracted by its colours. Because this Bolide is like blue and pink and yellow stock. Those are very bright, very vibrant. They're the sorts of things that are going to be catching your attention. And you want your attention to be on the road, on the apex. You don't want your attention to be on your left mirror. Now, what I've got here, built by the geniuses in Foxtail Studios, even though these are like a month old and it would have actually been GV gear at the time, but we don't talk about that, are 6 pristine designs on what are my top 6 most common cars out there. What you're looking at here is what happens when you get Foxtail to make 6 cars for you for this video. Well, when I say Foxtail, it's actually GV gear, because these are like 2 months old.
this was meant to be a GV episode, but doesn't fit in with the GV, so...
This first car is built around oversteer and the world's most disgusting design I've ever seen. I think he's meh. So this car is the best example of what happens when you go into a corner and just spin out. This is the Bolide we were driving earlier, basically. Well, with a flat 4 that only does 240 horsepower, and it's still understeers. And it has... is that 8 exhausts?
Okay.
So what this first problem is effectively, when you go around the corner, the car loses grip and ends up spinning out. This is common with a lot of older cars which don't have traction control. Understeer, we will be getting to that later. So this car, effectively, all it really does is this.
The acceleration is terrible. Okay, don't mock it. Got it. Tell anyway, because you really lifts up like a meter. Whoa, this thing is very oversteery. Keep on. That's fine.
About 5 seconds after he said this,
Yeah,
he died.
He's dead. Okay, car 1, yeah. Okay, that's terrifying.
Car number 2 drives perfectly fine, it just has some, weird proportions.
Is that the exhaust? Yes, it is. That's the exhaust. That's the sunroof. There is a sunroof on the... Another one of the, interesting... What is the front on it? Is that an indicator? Yeah. Yes, it is.
So effectively what I mean by clippy hitbox is it will get stuck on things.
The exhaust has clipped into the building. Give me just a second. This is interesting. Yeah, the exhaust is scraping if you can't hear.
Is a car with a clippy hitbox completely undrivable though?
But this is the
No.
first car.
No, you can get this thing around if you just avoid all the barriers.
We've made it. Oh. Okay.
This next car is sort of not really a problem. It's more when the car is, like, too powerful and too fast that it can be too hard to drive at times. The car is completely drivable, just you get a lot of adrenaline driving it for a long time, as it's very quick, very attention-seeking, you could say, if, like, cars can seek attention. This is the sort of car that would be seeking attention. It's very fast, you can't really let your eyes off it, because otherwise you will be in a wall. This next car is the arch nemesis of the first car we saw. This is understeer. This means that when you're going around the corner, the car is... I don't want to say loses traction. It grips too much to the point where it, like, stays in a straight line, if that makes sense. So what will happen is, you'll turn the wheel, and the car will go left a bit, but it won't go left enough. It will still grip too much and going straight, which means basically you're just going to plough straight into the barrier.
I'm not saying it is slow. Well, pigeon. I think it's faster than the other...
Common signs where you can hear this is if your tyres are screeching. That's usually how you can tell you're understeering if you're struggling to go to the corner, which, well, bad for me, as you can see. Really badly for me. And for the first car, gee, got yeeted. Number 5, I don't know what to say about this one. It has 1,600 horsepower, and it has, I think, like 180mm drum brakes.
Why has this got a manual locker?
I'll let you try and figure out what that means.
What? Oh yeah, the brakes are fun. What are you doing there? I'll cut out the engine again. Oh dear. front right tyre just deflated. Why? Oh dear. Oh no. Oh. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine. We're good. We're good. We are good. We are no longer good. We are very much not good. Hey, the tyres got smaller.
Number 6 is what I'm calling the American car. Even though this is meant to look like a BMW, it's got a V8, it's very fast, and it doesn't corner very well. Effectively, a muscle car.
Hello. I think the sound is bugged, I heard that. Yeah, the sound is bugged. It goes... Easy to drive, very either understeer or oversteering. It's got everything in this thing. It's like a jack of trade. It's very tense to drive. I am having to brake, accelerate, brake, accelerate, brake, accelerate, brake, accelerate, brake, accelerate, brake, accelerate a lot. And that's why you never say hello to cars. This is honestly terrible. Which is why I want you to try and make something good. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. There we go. Vroom, vroom. That's how you drive this thing. Vroom, 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 vroom. Okay, well, we made it.
So reviewing these 6 cars, which are my most common problems with cars, let's have a look at what you can do to solve them. Car number 1 has oversteer. This causes the driver to spin out and possibly hit into a barrier. The best solutions, I'd say, for this are taking your corners slowly and being more cautious on how much you're turning the wheel. If you do this, you should hopefully be able to slightly cause your car to understeer in a sense, but it will cancel out your oversteer. And you want to get like a fine line between the two. So I suggest practicing with your car to find how much you can turn the wheel without it spinning out. Also, throttle control will apply to this. It can also be kicking the car into oversteer, like I think that happened with our car. Car number 2 had a clippy hitbox. This means that it's much more prone to getting stuck on things. The effects of this is that you can't really go close to the lines that you might want to on track, because if you hit a barrier slightly, you will get stuck and then it's game over. The solution for this is, while it may affect your times, try your best to stay away from the barrier. Imagine it's like a shorter circuit in your head. That's all I can really say for this one. There's not much you can do. Car number 3 is when it's too intense. This means that you're getting all adrenaline and pumped up and you can't lose any focus, which can usually be a good thing. What I would suggest as a solution, if it's too fast for you, do try like tuning it to be a bit slower, maybe a bit towards your tastes, and do as the car wants you to. Keep focused, because otherwise you will end up crashing. Number 4 is the exact opposite of number 1. It's understeer, where you're really struggling to take the corner. It won't go where you want it to go or in the corners. Now, what I'd suggest for this is the same as understeer. Funnily enough, you'll want to be controlling your throttle and controlling your steering input around the corners. Try taking them slower, find the fine line on how much you should be going around and at what speeds. Do number 5 last, but number 6, the American car. Your problem here is that you're struggling to go around the corners at all. It's not effectively understeer or oversteer in a sense. It just simply doesn't want to corner. I would suggest try putting on some grippier tyres, maybe do a bit of tuning. You need to get to learn the car. If all else fails, try drifting it around the corners instead of actually like trying to take the corner, because that can be the best thing you can do. Now number 5, the car where everything's wrong. Funnily enough, you've seen this twice. Remember our little Burnside? That was made to be physically impossible to drive. So I'm going to show you here your solution. So first of all, I'm just going to try and set a lap in this without changing anything. This will be for like a baseline later to see how things improve over what we change. I'm going to be trying, when we build this thing to be better to drive, to try and make it appearance-wise still at the exact same once we're in cockpit camera. And as you can see, if I even try to apply full throttle for a second, it has bad consequences. So the first step is probably just try a bit of tuning. This tune in particular, I did make this as terrible as possible. You may want to try lowering your RPM limit if it's damaging the engine, try softening or even stiffening your suspension. It depends on what's going wrong with the car. Just have a look at what looks odd for the car and tune that. Mess around, make it better. Although do note, with this example, somehow I ended up making it worse with this tuning. So do note that tuning can make it bad if you don't know what you're doing. The main thing you want to be looking at if you want to extremely be overhauling your car is what exactly is wrong with it. What's the problem here? In our case, we're not getting enough grip to do anything. Now why? Well, for cornering, for starters, we've got drag tyres on the front. That's not helping us very much. And our tyres on the back are incredibly small. It's not going to help us a lot. We've also got an incredibly lightweight car here. The interior doesn't even have seats. Not even a steering wheel even. That's how lightweight this thing is. So, I know it sounds weird, but add weight to your car. And, if it's going bad still, do feel free to, turn down a bit of the engine stats. Make it a little less powerful. And this is how good that can be for you. And as you can see, the car that was once undrivable now does fine around a lap. I didn't have any sort of problems taking the corners. It topped out a bit at the end, but you can just mess around with your gears to get a longer gear if you want. So in conclusion, how can you be a good driver? Funnily enough, I've answered this already. In November. Skill, not speed. It's not about the speed of the car that's making everything thrilling. It's about your skill. You could easily have a barrel of fun taking around a base model Corvette around the track. But you need to learn your car. Whether it's throttle control, when you're taking your car around, keeping sure that you don't have turbo lag and that you're keeping it planted on the road without losing grip. Whether it's having to change your car physically in order to make it more for your tastes. It's about the driver. It's not about the car. You've got to make your car made for you. Here's a fun fact for you. The Dark Fur ad, the Hellhound advert. That car wasn't stock in how you get it in automation. I had that tuned so that it would be more grippy for when I was having to drift it around, because I kept spinning out all the time. That car was not made for me to be drifting around in an advert. That car was made to be a muscle car, and, well, I've already taught you about how you've got to drift around a muscle car. So, what do you need to do to be a good driver? You need to learn your car. Think about it. Lewis Hamilton, if he was to go out in Formula 1, having never driven his Formula 1 car, he would be out within the first few laps. It's like driving a go-kart. It's just like real life, come to think of it. If you don't have the skill to drive a car, you're not going to survive out there. So, if you want to be driving like a good person, learn your cars.